We have Republican Congressman Don Bacon of Nebraska joining us now. Congressman, what's your reaction to this ruling? Let's start with that.
Well, the Constitution was defended today, the checks and balances of the branches of government. I thought Neil Gorsuch wrote a brilliant ruling. It's really conservative philosophy that he espoused. I mean, Milton Friedman and Adam Smith and the founders and what they intended. And he made it clear, any tariff has to be approved by Congress. That is what he wrote, and that's the majority position. The president today kept quoting the dissenting view, which is not law. Neil Gorsuch's position is law. And so bottom line is any tariff that the president wants to do has to go through Congress and be approved. That's the bottom line from this ruling. And I agree with that. That's what the founders wanted. And that's what Republicans should want. We have long held this view. Just because President Trump disagrees shouldn't change what conservatives believe in.
And yet very few Republicans, right, have sort of stood up and said that as strongly as you did right there, which I want to revisit in a moment. But first off, as you said, it now requires Congress. Well, the president was asked if he's going to ask Congress for more tariff authority. He said, I don't have to. It's already been approved. We should note Section 122, under which he wants to do this 10% global tariff, expires in 150 days unless Congress extends them. What do you make of him saying that? I don't have to go to Congress. It's already been approved.
Well, he didn't read Neil Gorsuch's position on this. So that was the majority position in the ruling. And that is what is now law, unless it gets changed later down the road. I think if he goes ahead with this 10% global tariff, that will be brought up for a vote in Congress, and it will be defeated. It may not have a veto-proof majority, but it will have a majority that will go against that 10% global tariff. So I think the president is making a mistake here. Again, he's quoting a lot to support this from the dissenting position, but that is not law. And so I think the 10% global tariff also undermines his argument about these tariffs being reciprocal, right? This is what he was trying to defend the tariffs on. And I think a lot of folks like me never really believed it. I think he's been a tariff supporter since the 1980s. And I just want to come back and tell my fellow Republicans, we have opposed tariffs since World War II. It's been the conservative position. The last president to support tariffs that was a Republican was Herbert Hoover, and that it exacerbated the Depression, the worst Depression that we ever had. So the conservative position here is that tariffs are bad economics, it's bad politics, and we should defend that. I have not changed.
Yeah, and there are other Republicans, and we know this, who agree with you but haven't voted with you, right? And they have obviously a lot of political concerns. You were one of 6 Republicans to vote last week to effectively repeal the president's tariffs on Canada. He took shots at Republicans like you for that. You had previously suggested as many as 30 Republicans could join in that vote. Do you expect to be seeing with this decision more Republican support?
I do think so, but it's really hard to know. I do know many Republicans oppose tariffs if they don't want to go against the president's signature economic plan, though they themselves don't think it's wise. And I think the speaker had a couple of good arguments last week. He talked about the Supreme Court will rule on this, so let's just wait for that. And also the president will just veto this if it does pass, so it's only symbolic. That was the arguments that the speaker and others in the leadership are trying to use. And I think it persuaded some, but having this ruling now that was so clearly puts the power back in Congress's hands, the House's hands, we have to stand up on our own 2 feet and use these authorities because that's what the founders intended. So I intend to ensure that we continue to have votes now on these tariffs. I thought maybe we could back off because the Supreme Court ruled, but hearing the president just now saying he was going to do a 10% global tariff and he was going to try to use other authorities for tariffs means that we got to keep voting on this and having the majority position heard. So I think the president didn't do himself any favors with his comments today.
Yeah, and I know you think the majority opinion supported by the conservative appointed justices is brilliant. The president definitely does not agree. I think we could say coming out of that press availability that he had. But I wonder what you think about some of the words that he was using. He was saying, he expected the Democrats obviously to vote against him. You can't knock their loyalty. That's something you can do with our people. He talked about calling them fools for the rhinos, the Republicans in name only, and called them lapdogs, unpatriotic, disloyal to the Constitution, and perhaps most scathing and questionable, he said, I think it's an embarrassment to their families. He was saying that specifically of the conservative justices, or certainly the two that he appointed. Do you have any concerns when he talks about the justices like that?
Well, that's the way he talks, and unfortunately, he doesn't play chess and look ahead 3 or 4 moves. And you do that, you undermine folks wanting to work with him in the future. I mean, I have give a lot of examples from the first administration. He trashed Jerome Mattis, who I admired. But what does Jerome Mattis do? Later on, he gets his revenge. But let me just talk about the core issue here. The president thinks a good Republican does what he wants, right? I'm a Republican because I've been brought up with a Reagan philosophy of limited government, limited taxes, strong defense, pro-life. It's a conservative philosophy that I was raised on. I'm a Republican because of those views. If someone says that we're going to change our views and that's going to change the definition of being a Republican, well, I'm not a Republican then. I'm a conservative, and conservatives do not believe in tariffs. And if we do tariffs, we know that it has to be authorized by Congress, not just by the president. That is the conservative position, and I don't change from that. Now, if the president wants to change what a Republican believes in, that's a separate issue. Real conservatives know that tariffs are bad economic policy, and there's a constitutional way to do them if you wanted to do them, and we should not change from that.
Yeah, it's a constitutional opinion clearly now, as we are hearing from the court. Congressman Don Bacon, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.